So first of all, I would love to hear an intro from both of you. Yeah. So go ahead, Marino.
Absolutely. So, Pradumna, thank you so much for having me here today. Always appreciate the opportunity to hop on stage and talk about technology and DevOps. My name is Marino Widjay. I'm a developer advocate in the open source space, and I spent a lot of time in networking and network technologies, seeing it from the physical wire all the way to building virtual wires with network namespaces in Kubernetes. So excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for the intro, Marino. Yeah, Michael, you can go ahead.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, Michael K. So my background, similar to Marino, actually comes from like the virtualization, the infrastructure, maybe not as networky as Marino, but over the years been tinkering around with things like infrastructure as code and automating those tasks away. Probably the biggest thing that I've been involved in the DevOps space has been 90 Days of DevOps. So a project that I started in 2022, which was me consistently every single day for that first 90 days of the year, talking about something related to DevOps, whether it's the DevOps big picture, process, principles, tooling, and then diving into, okay, what is Linux? What is networking? What is a programming language that's best suited from a DevOps point of view? So I'm hoping that I can get into some of that and help some of the listeners as we go through the chat now. But yeah, also appreciate obviously the invite to be noisy about stuff on these chats.
So yeah, thank you so much for the intro, Marino and Michael, and huge shout out to Michael's repository, 90 Days of DevOps. I think it is around 25,000 stars, if I'm not wrong. Right, with your introduction.
Sure. Thanks a lot for sharing the invite. So, hello all. My name is Harsh Manohar, and I'm currently working as DevOps engineer, or you can also say as a senior software engineer at Oracle. And I've been to industry. I go also sharing my experience with the containers as the Docker captain, and I'm also the part of CNC of ambassador program. So yeah, I've been around these technologies of DevOps, containers, clouds, and all these things as since I would say it's 6 to 7 years. So yeah, that's all from my end.
It was a great introduction. So yeah, so I was saying like I started this series to talk about relevant technologies and how much it is relevant in 2024 or how much anyone should approach in 2024. So of course, the straight away question is how much is DevOps still relevant in 2024? Yeah. So anyone want to go ahead first?
I'll jump in because there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of marketing around platform engineering. And I do actually think platform engineering is a better title for the group that endorse and practice DevOps. And we probably should have had that way back when DevOps was a bit more of a buzzword. But I still stand by that DevOps is the principle and process that we adopt within our teams to achieve what we want to achieve, whether that is in a software development house, whether it is something where we use off-the-shelf software. I think DevOps is the mindset, is the culture, all the fluffy stuff that we've said over the years. But I absolutely believe that DevOps and platform engineering live together, and one is not exclusive from the other. I think that's probably my quick take on that.
Yeah, really love that. Marino, you would like to go ahead? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Harsh. Go ahead.
Yeah, so even I also completely agree with whatever the Michael mentioned about that. So also I think the terms nowadays hanging around the internet is more of a platform engineering and everyone talking about that. So previously the buzz was about terms DevOps only, but if we see around the goes through the job description and everything, mostly it is the same only. I'm not seeing any difference. So nowadays it is there. And also I have seen, if we I've been going through these different JDs requirements and everything, people are now also going for the SREs. But again, it is personally I also consider it is somewhere same only if you remove the part of SLIs, SLOs, and everything from SREs. But yeah, I do agree with whatever Michael said. It is mostly same.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that too, because a long time ago, probably about 15 years ago, was when I was deep into my systems administration career. What did we do as systems admins? What did we do? We took backups of our servers. We tested our backups. We stood up servers when developers or someone in the organization wanted access to a server. We fixed the network. We troubleshot the network. We deployed laptops. We imaged laptops. We did a lot of different things. We had systems that managed mail. We had BlackBerry Enterprise servers. We had everything, and it was all managed by one or two individuals, right? Now, a lot of that was heavy click ops, but what came out of that was process, right? We are trying to do this, and this is the output of doing this. Now, by having that output, by having that repeatable process, what can we do with that? We can automate it. So a lot of automation started to happen between 15 years ago and today, right? And I am using 15 years ago because it's very, very close to around that timeline where I was just literally sitting in a server room closet deciding if I wanted to configure RAID or do something like ZFS. Now, that's besides the point, right? The idea here is we are standing up systems. We have to make sure they're maintained and they're running. How is that different than what we are doing today? The biggest difference is there's a lot of abstraction, right? And then there's a lot of automation. And then there's a lot of drive to leverage existing skill set to achieve one and two. That third piece there is stuff that we do today with like Pulumi and IAC and leveraging things like TypeScript and Go to stand up our infrastructure. But when you decide I don't want to use code anymore, I want to do this with my hands. Well, we just went back in time 15 years, and we'd just be doing it with our hands all over again with ClickOps and wires. That's really it. Now, there's another side to this too, right? The process and the mindset, the collaboration, the fostering of a no blame culture. That last one has still really hasn't gone away. We still blame, not necessarily people, but we blame systems, we blame things. We haven't really gotten past that blame phase. Instead, what we really need to focus on, and what we've been trying to do for the longest time in DevOps, is implementing a mindset of if something seems to be off, let's adjust. Let's keep adjusting as we get there. It might be incremental adjustments, like we are making to our code, right, in an incremental fashion, so as to not break the entire thing if something changes that is so tiny, right? And that's how we've gotten to this point of, okay, DevOps in 2024. But that is no different than how we used to do things in 2009, I think, 2009. Yeah, that's 15 years ago. It's literally sitting there in my server room closet doing exactly what I just described.
Yeah, Marina, I'll add to that as well. Like I've just posted actually an article that I wrote last year around the evolution of the sysadmins to DevOps in 2023, because exactly that is all. And this is why I say about platform engineering being a better group name for sysadmins, DevOps, or whatever you want to call that person, because doesn't matter what company you work for. Maybe you're a DevOps engineer, and maybe as a DevOps engineer, your company doesn't create software, and really you're there to provide some sort of system that allows you to quickly deploy new VMs into your estate. Or maybe you're focused on Kubernetes, and you're defining what container orchestration engine you're using and all of that good stuff. But ultimately, it's the same as Marino said, is with the difference between DevOps engineer one at company A to DevOps engineer at company B could be wildly different, in that DevOps engineer at company B, they might be a software house. We might be looking at developer platforms. We might be really making that developer life much easier. So I think that evolution is it's just an evolution of the sysadmin role that we've had for longer than the 15 years that Marino touched on. Like, we've had sysadmins, which again was a great name for a sysadmin is a jack of all trades, master of none. They're not experts, but they are experts in the overarching everything. And I think also as we look at 2023 and what we saw globally around recession and financials across the world is companies having to do more with less, and having to pivot to more of that DevOps and automation focus, because I now need where I had a team of 5 people to do everything manually, I've now only got 1 person or 2 people. And I think 2024 is a continuation of that. We've seen all big tech get rid of thousands of people within their ranks. So I think that just something to add to what Marino was saying.
Wow, we already so much deep into that, and you both dropped some really good bombs. But yeah, I think that cleared a lot of picture for sure. And thanks, Marino, for going back and making it more understandable. So yeah, we talk about it is, of course, it is super relevant. So how anyone should approach a DevOps in 2024? I know, Michael, you have awesome repository. I know, Marino, you have amazing spaces going on. So yeah, just want to understand, and from Harsh as well, I know you are writing amazing blogs on those as well.
So I think this will absolutely come down to the individual. So I very much, which is strange and a contradiction to how I started learning DevOps and writing that down, is that I don't generally read much anymore. Pre-pandemic, that was all I was reading, was blog posts and articles and books. Now I'd much rather gravitate towards a 20-minute video on YouTube, or some sort of course that's built around 20-30 minutes. Any more than that, I'm going to switch off and I'm going to find something else to do. But equally, a lot of people do like that reading aspect to it. So I think you've got to understand how you learn. The structure and stuff like that, yes, 90 Days of DevOps will give you a structure. You can easily go, right, I'm going to go and learn a programming language. I'm going to go and learn Python. I'm going to go and learn Golang. You might read the first 7 days of that in 90 Days of DevOps, but really you're going to get the meat of that topic when you go off to videos or books that are going to enhance that learning. But you've also got to pick where you really enjoy, because so me and Marino, for example, and I'm picking on Marino just because we know each other really well, is that if someone asks me, right, you're going to learn DevOps and the first topic that you're going to go and learn is networking, I'm going to be like, oh, I don't know about that. The OSI layer, all of that, the framework, yeah, or DNS, yeah, that's not really going to enthuse me to deep dive into the world of DevOps. Start with something like Linux, though, or containerization or infrastructure as code, then you've got my grasp. Whereas I would say maybe Marino would start with the networking and then he would build his list around that. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Marino, but I think everyone's different how they learn, and I think that's the important part.
Yeah, I think naturally we have an inclination towards things we're very interested in. I was inclined to really go down the path of networking because I wanted to follow the packet, like way back when. Look, plugging in wires into switches wasn't doing it for me. Understanding how I could segregate some of those, networks using VLANs, that was really cool. Watching those pings go, the moment that link came on, watching those pings fly when neighborships formed, that was fun for me, and it still always was. And Michael is right. Networking might be a huge jump into it, and I would never start with networking. Networking was something that came after. I started with Windows, to be honest. I learned Windows networking first before I really understood true networking. Now, having said that, Michael is absolutely on point. You start with Linux. The reason why you start with Linux is everything we do in DevOps is based off of Linux. Everything, every little thing, from the containers that we run to the automation that we need to create with Bash to the way we run our management tools on Linux. There's so many different usages for that operating system. They act as our base images for our containers. They support the node images for running Kubernetes or even like hypervisors. or virtualization. ESX, KVM, these were all based off of Linux. At the end of the day, there's nothing, super unique about how any of these things are doing it. It's all a wrapper at the end of the day. It's all a wrapper and a set of labels that helps us achieve this illusion of either virtualization or containerization. But there's also some other interesting stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Now, I think Linux is a great start. The next thing after that is networking. The reason why that is because everything has to connect. Everything has to connect on a port, has to connect with an IP address. Everything has to connect using a host name. And we have to know this information. We have to know where this information lives. We have to know how to modify this information, how to manipulate it to influence the flow of traffic, to influence how our availability behaves for our applications. That is networking, right? And that's addressed in so many different levels, at the wire level, at this software logic level, at the DNS level, at the application level. And we have so many touch points, but a lot of what went on in the last 20 years was, let's create some separation where you could actually still deploy simplistic networks, right? And leverage high speed capabilities. Push packets as fast as you can, right? That's all I care about. But the rest of the intelligence is going to live in software, which is where software defined networking really started to shine, because I could build repeatable networks in software as many times as I want to look like so many different things, to also achieve things like disaster recovery. But I just need some really high speed fabrics, high speed switching. Now, networking isn't the be all end all of everything, because once you have the roadways up and running, what do you do next? You start building applications. How do you start building applications? Well, you have a team of developers, they have an idea, right? They need to store these ideas somewhere. They need to store some of their prototypes in some version control system. Okay, they've done that. Now they're also testing on their local laptops. And now they need to find a way to mimic that same kind of environment somewhere else. I'll stop there because I can continue to go forever, but it's honestly, like, there's so much you need to know to really understand DevOps, but it starts with Linux. And then I personally think, this is just me, I'm biased, the next thing you would want to do is learn networking.
I will add something, but yeah, Harsh, anything would you like to add?
Yeah, so I would say Michael and Marino mostly explain everything about starting from the Linux. If you are going into the DevOps in 2024, I absolutely agree. And also it is more like Marino mentioned specifically, the second would be kind of the networking. And personally I would say, if you are going towards the DevOps, then maybe you can choose the cloud as the second stage kind of thing, and then you can, along with the cloud, you can learn the networking together, and then just to move ahead, creating the infrastructures and everything. And he also mentioned about mimicking out the infras and everything. So on start stage, you can take ISEs and all those things. But it's again depends on the individual. If someone is like that, who more prefer to directly jump in and hit up the wall and then learn. So then it is depends and up to them only, if someone is starting from networking. But again, it is not even suggested to just start from there. And as we move ahead, then people have nowadays different options to choose. So as some might have the preference with the ML ops, AI ops, and all those things. But the basic, I would say, the Linux. And I also say, someone have the development experience, then it is kind of a butter on a bread. It would be definitely helpful to start with the DevOps if you have the experience with DevOps. So
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael, Marino, and Harsh. To be honest, in this space, I was thinking to key focus on the hard question, which is less as, but glad you all bring back to the roots, talking about how to get started. But yeah, thank you so much for that. But I think Michael touched upon this platform engineering thing, and we are listening a lot, like platform engineering, and I also recently, not recently, a couple of months back, saw this trending on the Twitter. DevOps is dead. DevOps is dead. I just want to touch back on this because I can see there are listeners who are just getting started with DevOps. So why this term is coming along? Like if platform engineering and DevOps are so related, why everyone is like so emphasizing DevOps is dead? Like two questions, like why DevOps is dead is so getting emphasized, and what is the difference between platform engineering and DevOps, or are both the same, or are both independent or interrelated in some way? So yeah, I think this will clear each and every doubt of every person. Yeah.
So I don't know the history behind it. I know it was if we look back to maybe it was around KubeCon in Detroit in 2022, where we saw some outrageous marketing saying that DevOps was dead. But if you look at the definition of things like platform engineering from, say, Microsoft or analysts, but let's say Microsoft because we all know Microsoft, and they say that it's a practice built up from DevOps principles that seeks to improve each development team's security, compliance, costs, and time to business value. So it's very much, in fact, I would say it's akin to what we, again, sorry if you're an absolute beginner, but from a agile methodology is very much embraced by some DevOps practices as well. Platform engineering just gives us that overarching look and feel of, oh, we're going to take the principles of DevOps and we're going to adopt them into our daily practice. And I think from what I was saying before was platform engineering is probably a better terminology because not everyone is using the public cloud. Not everyone is using Kubernetes. Not everyone is using virtualization, but they're all platforms in their own right. Not everyone's using serverless. Not everyone's using physical, or we're using a bit of everything or a bit of some. And they're all platforms. So to be able to provide a platform on top of that to your developers or to your end users or to your customers, that's just the terminology seems to fit better than dev and ops or DevOps. I don't know if there's anything else to add on that from everyone.
Yeah, Marina, would you like? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so platform engineering, I love that term because the folks that coined it alongside DevOps is dead. It was a great marketing tactic because there was some overall boringness in this element or in this domain of DevOps, and platform engineering is just a new name for trying to achieve some of the same goals, right? But here's the other consideration. With platform engineering, there's two things here. There's two keywords, platform and engineering. The platform piece is something that has existed for a long time. Ever heard of Google Cloud Platform? Ever heard of AWS Platform? Ever heard of vSphere? These are all platforms that did a variety of things, right? They allowed you to host applications. They allowed you to attach them to the network. They allowed you to put storage on these applications that you could store state. They allowed you to back up these applications, provide firewalling technology to these apps as well. They allowed you to do things like disaster avoidance, maintenance, a lot of different things that we do in the cloud today, except we didn't have the economies of scale or just in general the scale or access to that hardware where it could be ready to go, right? And that's why we gravitated to the cloud. A lot of that platform engineering effort that went into the cloud is available to all of us. In fact, a lot of it has been open sourced in various ways. And what that truly means is we need a place to run our app. Okay, we need a place to make sure that while our app is running, there is resiliency. We need a place to see what our app is doing, or we need tools to see. So there's a little bit of observability going on. We need to provide identity to our applications so we know who they are, right? So they authenticate properly, and everything else that needs to interact with these systems authenticate too. We also need to have some authorization layer. So we have an RBAC model in place. We also need to have a CI/CD system so that as we make changes, they get implemented on a cycle, on a given period, or a given schedule. We also need to have testing methods to make sure everything that we put into our code is valid and doesn't break things down the line. So all of this stuff we've been doing before, we're doing today, and the ultimate goal And I'm sorry to say this or offend anyone that might have played with this technology a long time. The ultimate goal is we're trying to get to Heroku all over again. We're trying to get to a single API or a single interface that'll allow our developers to drop in code, and then it'll deploy and everything will magically work. But behind the scenes, all the under the hood pieces, all the mechanics are there. The storage, the networking, the compute exists because those are the solid pillars that need to be there. And then all the logic layer that lives either in a hypervisor, in the platform that you either built or you bought also lives, and it all exposes that API to the developer. That is what we're doing with platform engineering, which is no different than what we were doing with Heroku. Heroku, on the other hand, was way ahead of its time. Also, at that time, did a lot of things that a lot of people didn't care for today, or back then, which they care for today, which is why we are here.
That is, I think, one of the best takes. Like, take example of Heroku and compare with this thing. So I think I learned a lot, like, with this comparison. But yeah, go ahead, Harsh. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you simply want to, in a simple word, if you want to just separate out what personally I think the difference between DevOps and platform engineering is, again, more like, if you see, the DevOps is kind of a methodology like Agile and all those. If you see these, DevOps is more of integrating the development and everything. So nowadays, developers, even the developers are doing the CI/CDs. Uh, they have idea about how to set up the CI/CD, set up the collaboration between the teams and everything. While if you specifically see on the side of platform engineering, then platform engineers are mostly into the doing the automations of infrastructure only and ensuring the security of infrastructure. So it's more like as Marina mentioned about Google Cloud Platform and the Heroku. So the ultimate goal is to create some infrastructure automations and ensuring the security with whatever required, whether it's a container virtualization or anything, or even in your organization you are creating some self-service portal that is helpful to developer, and you just hit the API request to that specific self-service portal, and that portal will be creating the multiple deployments applications for you. So I would say for um, for specific organization, the requirement should be something like that only. When you say about the platform engineering, you are creating some type of platform with that you can deploy and pre-configured some environment with securities, compliances, all those things. So yeah, that is more kind of a difference I see between DevOps and platform engineering.
Thank you so much, Harsh, for adding that. Yeah, let's go ahead with some more questions. So I think we heard this a lot, like, and people are confused a lot about this tooling thing. DevOps has so many tools for sure, and uh, I personally, and my take on this thing is like, you should not run behind the tools like which everyone is learning. Instead, you should learn the basic tools and approach the tools which companies are using or your company are applying. Though you should learn those tools in this way. But yeah,
So regarding if someone is just starting with DevOps, then I would say whatever basic tools are currently available, then someone can start with those tools. Like for example, if I specifically talk about the Jenkins, then it is nowadays I would say the more default tool, and it is also open source available. So anyone can start learning that and have the idea around what is the concept of CI/CD jobs and everything. And if in organization you have any requirement, like you are using the for example GCP cloud build, then you have to write that YAML configuration for the CI/CD. But you have the basic idea how the CI/CD runs, job runs and everything, then it would be fine. So what approach generally I take is more like you should have the basic experience with specific tools or the technology that you are there. Also, the another example I would like to take is the I would say the policy example. So if you have the idea about OPA, how the policy works and everything, and how that specific tool is, implementing the policies, then similar tools are available now in market, but you have the basic concept clear. So yeah, that is recently someone was asking me about one tool that even I have never heard. So I just Google it, and I just search around, and it just took me 5 to 10 minutes to figure out how it is configuring everything, and configure on my local system. And I just started using that specific tool also, because I had the this basic idea and hands-on experience with general open source tool. So yeah, that is what I would say if anyone is trying to use or learn.
Yeah, I think that is a very good point, Harsh, because it's like a programming language. We used to talk like if you are good with one language and you know the basics how it works, it's really become easy to switch between different languages. For example, if you learn JavaScript, you can switch between something else. So yeah, anything would you like to add, Michael or Marino, on this side? Go ahead.
We started to talk about like some of the things about like containerization and understanding what a Docker file, how it works. But I think we were just talking there about potential programming languages, and I think you can get completely overwhelmed if you start looking at that programming language and start looking at things like software design and architecture, and whether that is actually the job of DevOps to understand that. And I'm contradicting myself here, because I absolutely started 90 Days of DevOps with the first topic saying learn a programming language, and really tossed up between Python and Golang. And actually, I wish, my only regret of the whole project was probably moving that a little bit further down the line, because it's very tough for a non programmer that's never done anything with computer science and never done anything with a programming language to jump straight in and start building something, unless they're absolutely copying something in there. So I would put that down the list. But is it worth doing? 100%. But I would specifically choose one of those two, either Python or Golang, just simply because if you look at Golang, similar to how Marino was talking about, if you look at Linux, everything stems from Linux. So like the containers that we use, etc. When we look at Golang is very much a cloud native programming language. If you look at Kubernetes, it's written in Go. So is Docker. So is Prometheus, and many other projects. Actually, the reason why I chose to at least dive into the Golang language was purely because of because Casting K10, which is one of the companies I work for, is written in Golang. So I wanted some sort of insight to understand, well, what the hell is this even doing? But equally, Python is a great programming language for them all. Like, it works across a lot of different use cases. Very topical in 2024 around data science, machine learning, AI, etc. Not saying that Go can't do the same thing, but there seems to be a lot more projects around there, or packages around Python, that can do that. I think it's just my only word of warning is you could spend the whole of 2024 trying to learn a programming language, and you're not learning other aspects of it. So don't spend all your time on a programming language, because yes, you might be creating little mini CLIs and automation tools that help make your day easier in a DevOps type role, but you'd be much better to use that time to understand how to write a Docker file, how to create that, what does Argo CD look like? What does that process look like? What does Jenkins look like? As much as Jenkins looks like it's from the 1980s, it's still the de facto CD or CI pipeline tool out there in the ecosystem. So understanding that is a huge benefit. And then also looking at things like Terraform or any other infrastructure as code, Pulumi, open tofu, if you will, and then also things like application configuration management tools like Ansible, like Chef, like Puppet. But just choose one. Like, you don't have to know everything about everything. It's one of the things I made a point of saying about, in particular, around learn a cloud provider as part of that learning journey, was there is no point in going to learn AWS, Azure, and Google all at the same time, because it's gonna take longer. If you go and learn Azure, Microsoft Azure, you're going to have a great grasp and an understanding of what the cloud looks like, what services are available when you then go to AWS, and then when you go to Google, if you need to go there. So hopefully that's useful.
I want to add on to what Michael said around, learning a programming language. You're not learning a programming language to develop applications, right? Especially when it comes to DevOps. Are you going to be a developer? If you're going to be a developer, DevOps is not, you're not learning code for DevOps at that point. You're actually learning algorithms, how to develop functions, how to tie these functions together and whatnot. But when it comes to DevOps, right, like, you can literally go to Pulumi's doc site. And I know this is a shill for Pulumi, but they have examples on how to work with AWS and stand up infrastructure with TypeScript or Go, or even Python. And when you actually look at, let's say, if you went to AWS and looked at their CDK or their SDK, well, I don't even know what they call it these days, but their development toolkit, which allows you to use whatever programming language you want, it's the same concept when you're deploying with CloudFormation or other means. It's the same idea. You're basically taking a language stack and deciding, hey, I want this language to do this for me for my infrastructure. But that's all it's going to do, because it's a static thing, it's a one-time thing, and you have to kind of intervene if you want to make those changes. So here's a perfect example. If you want, check out UserBinCat at UserBinCat and check out some of her tweets around some of the stuff she's been doing with Pulumi, with IAC, and building infrastructure and, let's say, a Kubernetes environment with Cilium and Kubernetes in kind, but using TypeScript. So I had her explain to me last week how this TypeScript function worked. And it read so well to me because I'm not a developer, right? I'll be very, very blunt and honest. I don't write code, but I can understand it because I can understand YAML. I can understand a lot of different other kinds of code because, okay, fine, 20 years ago I did write code. I'm a liar. I did write a little bit of Java. So a lot of that stuff still stuck with me. And the one thing I will say to everyone is, if you learn one programming language, the fundamentals are transferable across all stacks. It's just the syntax that you have to start worrying about. So thank you, ChatGPT, for being available to me when I need something like an example that I can take and review, make sure it's accurate for my needs, and then pop it in, right? It's all about intent. This is what I'm trying to do. Can you give me something that'll help me achieve this? And that's the real engineering, right? Knowing the code, sure, you could dig into memorization of syntax and whatnot, but the real value is knowing how to build, how to engineer, and how to work around constraints, and knowing the limitations of the tools that you are using, which is every developer, every engineer, every platform engineer, every DevOps engineer that I know. Even network engineers do the exact same thing. So having said that, right, you don't have to invest in one particular language, especially if you're not a developer. If you're in the world of DevOps, pick something like Go, pick something like Python even if you want to, or TypeScript, and stick with it. Just become really good at it and know how to understand how to work around something if you run into issues. I haven't picked my horse yet. I don't know what I want to pick. I'm all over the place when it comes to a language, but someone's got to, stick it to me and say, just pick one and slap me all over the place and say, run with Python or Go or something. Because I can't pick. I really can't. They're all hot and sexy to me.
Wow, that was amazing. Like, I think I am learning a lot. Learning a lot.
What was that question again?
The question was like, are there any good resources you recommend or you use to learn like the technologies or the tooling? If someone wants to get started, or either they want to brush up on certain technologies. This was the question.
Yeah, okay, so I'll be very, very honest. There are so many resources, so many. They're all so good. They're also unique in their perspective as well, and that's the challenge. Like, I can never pick one. I'd just say go start with 90 Days of DevOps, only because Michael's here. If he wasn't here, I'd probably say the same thing anyways, because I love the fact that he's kind of addressed everything in a very small, bite-sized fashion. That's important, right? Because when you think about accessibility for a second, not everyone can consume everything in a day or in a week or in a month. But if you make it small enough that it can be grouped, like I could take 4 sessions and group them into a day for a week and focus on that and do that every week, it's much more sustainable to learn, much more achievable. You learn in smaller chunks. You now have given yourself mental real estate to go and investigate those 4 topics that you've learned that at that start of the week, and now you have that rest of the week to really become an expert or get close to it, right? But the idea is 90 days, right? You've taken the entirety of DevOps, and it's not the entirety, but a good portion of it, and compress it into 90 days, which doesn't mean you're going to learn everything all in 90 days. It means you have an excellent starting point to bounce off of that once you've accomplished that first 90 days. So it's important. Go check it out. Michael, thank you so much for making something like that. I can't recommend any other resources at the moment because anything else is either going to be on YouTube, it's going to be because some of us share great tweet threads, or because it lives on some paid platform. And one of my things is whenever I give out knowledge, it shouldn't be paid for. I just want to give it out. So I try my best to help folks that are there that sell this stuff too, and who they are. But whatever I give out, it's going to be free. So thanks all.
Yeah, 100%. And cheers, Marino, for giving us a plug there. But exactly that. I think the important part is there is so much knowledge out there. There's a lot of good people creating other paid for courses. But yeah, like Marino, it's all about helping the community. I've taken so much from the community over the last 20 years of my career. This is about giving back. That repository is just one little area that I can give back and hopefully help. My idea around content is that it helps one person. When you go through that repository, if you go through it, I'm not the smart one, right? They were my notes. Go down to the bottom of each day and you're going to see resources, and there's links to YouTube channels that are free and open that you can go and learn something in a little bit more detail. So as much as I wrote 110,000 words in 2022 and got some help from friends for 2023, and there's 90 new sessions coming out on YouTube right now for this year. But when I first started, I was learning from resources that I found on YouTube. That's it. I didn't read books, although I think I do actually list a couple of books out there. But again, they're not free. They're not accessible for everyone. Whereas YouTube generally is available to everyone, even with the annoying ads. So yeah, scroll down to the bottom. You're going to see resources in each of the topics that we cover, and then you can go and listen to them. The one person I will absolutely call out, because she's a big part of those resources across all of the topics, is Tech World with Nana. And I've not, so I know she has paid for content as well, but you can learn so much from her channel and her free YouTube videos. I would 100% start there. She does some incredible stuff around all of the topics that we've kind of touched on today, whether it be infrastructure as code with with Terraform, or whether it be learning a programming language with Golang. She's got a video literally for all of those. And she just has an incredible way of articulating that and putting that across with animations, and yeah, just very easy to consume the content that she creates.
I just want to add 110,000 words. Holy shit. How many YouTube videos did you have to watch? How many YouTube ads did you have to watch to get there? Let's all take a moment of silence and pay our respects to Michael for committing that time to YouTube ads, especially the ones that disguise themselves as 3-hour-long tutorials.
I don't have that many questions, but you all like elongate in some way, like we touch upon programming language, like how to get started and everything. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And I would like to take final words from you all three, and what are you currently working on and how you're looking forward in 2024. So yeah, First one is Michael on the right side. So yeah, go ahead, Michael.
So my advice is, in a world where we're in like social media and it's so easy to get caught up by comparing ourselves with others, is understand how you learn, and also learn what excites you and choose that path. DevOps might not be the right path for everyone. You might find that actually you want to be a developer, and that's fine as well. Like, whatever path you want to take and what interests you is going to be the most important, and it's also going to be the most gratifying process as well, because you're actually going to get something out of it. So don't follow the herd. Do what you want to do. Learn how you want to learn. If that's reading, great. If that's watching YouTube videos, great. If you feel that actually if you spend money on certain courses that you're going to actually sit through them and enjoy them, then great. But you're you, and you should choose your own path, how you want to learn.
I would say, right, this might be a little bit of a controversial thing. I still think tech is for everyone. There's a lot of different areas in tech outside of the world of DevOps that either are more technical or less technical, and it's all dependent on the degree that you're most interested in. Would you rather handle more of the communication side? Would you rather get your hands dirty? Would you rather be the one that has to be responsible for thousands or hundreds of thousands of containers and systems? It's all going to entirely depend on what you're after, right? And there's so many different avenues you can take. I took the path of going down network engineering, and look where it got me, right? And now I'm sitting here in a panel with a bunch of intelligent people, and I'm like the only person that has no idea how to work with development and IAC. That's okay though, because I know how packets move and I'll find my way around the network. And that is a specialty in itself that a lot of folks, tend to overlook as a skill set. But let me tell you something, right? When I first started my networking career, I learned things like the CCNA. I did all that, the cabling. I set up VLAN, set up routing, did the IPsec and the WAN stuff. And then I thought that a lot of that stuff would become irrelevant. In the last year, I can't tell you how many times I've played with BGP, had conversations about IPsec, discussed WireGuard with several parties or interested parties around its capability over IPsec, discussed MTLS, discussed things like multi-cluster Kubernetes and the networking underneath the hood, understood or tried to help folks understand how QoS enters the chat again. This is all networking stuff that I used to do years ago that is still highly relevant today. I bring this up because anything that you start building on today, right, any skill set, whether it's a language that you pick up, is still going to be relevant several years from now. Look at Java. I started with Java 20 years ago, left it, came back to it like 5 years ago, looked at it again, learned a little bit again, and then realized it's still highly vibrant in the community. There's a massive community out there. Ever heard of DevNexus?
Yeah, so I would say whatever Marino and the Michael mentioned is mostly about picking up the horse only, and I also do agree, because I would say 6 to 7 years back I also did the CCNA, and when I started with Kubernetes containers and all those, then that definitely it was so much of helpful for me, and I was more into kind of networking guy in early stage. But yeah, again, Marino mentioned about you can change your host if there is any requirement or so. So yeah, then later I moved towards the containers, Kubernetes, and everything. So it is up to you, like what you are looking forward, and what new skill at least you can learn in a 1 year, and you can take it forward for further. So personally, I do like that way only. So in a year, I master one specific technology or tool, which can help me in a future somehow. So that is how. Regarding the content and everything, mostly I would say specifically if you go to the YouTube, you might come across so many Indian YouTubers. So some are creating learn this uh, technology in 2 hours, 4 hours, and all those things. So maybe you can just go through it and get the idea how the things working. So yeah, mostly yeah, that's it. I would say you can pick up, learn it, and take it further as an experience to the years, and that it will help you for sure, definitely in the future.